Already, today is the first day of fall, the autumnal equinox. Today, the Earth's axis is evenly aligned with the sun, and this position is called the equinox, as you know, because today and tonight are equal in length. And this evening out of light and dark is something we count on happening twice a year, now and once again at the spring equinox. Maybe we look forward to it, I know I do, because it kicks off such a beautiful season. Or maybe because the equinox is such a reassuring image of balance between light and dark. But that equilibrium only lasts the day. The nights will already begin to lengthen tomorrow. In the changes and chances of our human lives, moments of balance between light and dark are just as fleeting as the equinox, but never make it onto our calendars. Our lives are marked by joy and suffering alike, and we can seldom predict their coming and going. Sometimes the dark settles over us with such weight that we wonder if we will ever see the sun again. Most of us can relate to this, having lived through our own dark times. And collectively, our community faces this reality right now as we have grieved and prayed over the tragic and untimely deaths of several people over the last few weeks in our wider community. Most recently, the high school senior Elliot Kropf, whose funeral is tomorrow at St. Aloysius Church, and who is a friend to many in our parish. These tragedies that come to us like a thief in the night can either paralyze us or awaken us to reflect on our lives and on the collective human condition that is sometimes marked by hopelessness and despair in ourselves and others. We grieve because we love. We grieve other people's losses of children, partners, friends, because we know how fiercely they are loved, because we love our own just as fiercely. Suffering with others is the very meaning and etymology of the word compassion. And so to engage in compassion means we don't suffer uniquely or alone. Jesus' ongoing teaching about his own suffering and death is our invitation to confront and overcome these experiences in ourselves and to help others do the same. Because those who have endured terrible pain can attest that eventually, though grief means we will never be the same, we can be whole again, seeing both joy and sorrow as part of the human condition. Reminding each other of these things is how we embody the truth that just as Jesus was betrayed into human hands and killed, he rose again, and so will we. This is our hope, and it is the resurrection rhythm of our lives. Our darkest times are never the end of the story. The way to endure is to endure. As Robert Frost wrote, the only way out is through. We must endure through our dark nights, because as the psalmist says, weeping spends the night, but joy comes in the morning. I have a good friend, Jennifer Michael Hecht, who wrote a poignant and gripping book on the terrible topic of suicide. She titled it Stay. And in it, she offers a sweeping history of the philosophies against this mode of dying, from the Roman times to the present day. Her thesis joins the wisdom of the ages from across religious and secular traditions that compel her fellow humans, before we get to the darkest place, to consider all the reasons and philosophies and hard-won insight into why suffering is possible to endure, and even necessary to our deepest soul-making. We all have a future self that is wiser than the person we are today. The bottom line is, we owe it to one another simply to stay alive. If we consider all the wisdom of enduring our hardships, anything can happen. First, choose to stay. This is just what Jesus implores us to do. Stay with him, to abide with him, to follow him on his way. He promises to be with us always, even to the end of the ages. First, choose to stay. As human beings who have in common that we each suffer in our various ways and seasons, we are equipped to be the lamplighters for one another in each other's dark times, and to implore each other to endure, to stay. We need each other to do this. This is the work of human community, and it is most especially the work of a faith community. If we do not have the certainty of hope in our lives to share, we've not heard or understood the good news that Jesus lived out and teaches us, namely, that the very life, the realm, the kingdom, the power, the light of God is within us, whether or not we can recognize it, articulate it, or understand it fully. Our spiritual work, like the earth to the sun, is to align our whole selves with the light of God, and to let that be the light that drives out our darkness at all times and in all seasons of our lives. It only takes a crack in our armor to let the light in. As Leonard Cohen so famously wrote in that very familiar lyric, "Forget your perfect offering. There's a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in." We so easily become anxious about earthly things. Am I good enough to satisfy the standard that I've set for myself? Am I impressive enough to win over my friends? Am I successful enough to please my parents or my peers? Will our politicians save our country or drive it into chaos? Is there still time to do enough about the changing climate to feel like our children have a bright future? We have many earthly things to be anxious about, and many confusing, befuddling, or even downright misleading sources of information to go on. But anxiety about earthly things is no friend of ours. As our collect of the day says, "Grant us, Lord, not to be anxious about earthly things, but to love things heavenly, even now while we are placed among things that are passing away, to hold fast to those things that endure." What endures is the light of God that drives away our inner darkness, even in the midst of the dark circumstances of our world, our own social situation, our own financial straits, even the existential threat of our planet's changed and changing climate. None of these things are beyond hope when we share our burdens with one another and find solutions as one. Jesus teaches the disciples about his path, the path they have signed on to and yet do not understand. And they are deafened to his words by their fear and denial. They wish their darkness away by focusing on which one of them is the greatest. Such a clear image of people escaping the dread in front of them by going for familiar distractions. But fear and denial are ends in themselves for all of us, not a way out of our pain. The spiritual giant of the 20th century, a Dutchman named Henry Nouwen, whose own life was racked by nearly impossible loneliness and pain, wrote extensively about loss. He said, "The question is not whether you have experienced loss, but rather how you live your losses. Are you hiding them? Are you pretending they aren't real? Are you refusing to share them with your fellow travelers? Are you blaming someone for what you have suffered and lost?" He said, "There's another option. There's the possibility of mourning. To grieve is to experience the pain of your life and face the dark abyss where nothing is clear or settled, where everything is shifting and changing. To fully grieve is to allow your losses to tear apart feelings of false security and safety and lead you to the painful truth of your brokenness and your dependence upon God alone. Then finally you can honestly say, yes, this is my life, and I accept it." The disciples experienced excruciating loss when Jesus died, but they did not suffer their fear or their loss alone. And eventually they did come to understand, and they went all in to become great by becoming servants of all, just as Jesus taught them. And their lives went on to change the world with the good news of Jesus' way of love and compassion and hope and resurrection. They barely understood anything when things were the darkest for Jesus or for themselves. Anything could have happened, but first and together, they chose to stay through their darkest night. And so must we, for the light will come. Amen.